Welcome to Tritiyo Matra. After Bangladesh owned independence in 1971, the Liberation War, the Kingdom of the Netherlands was one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh as a nation and set up diplomatic tie. Since then, the Netherlands has contributed to various development activities in Bangladesh, ranging from sanitation, water management, and food security to human rights and migration. To discuss the future of bilateral relations between Bangladesh and the Netherlands, it is my pleasure to welcome the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Bangladesh, Mr. Anne van Leeuwen. Mr. Ambassador, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How has been your experience so far with Bangladesh and its people?
Well, thank you for having me in this interview. It's a delight to be here. And I think it's almost on the day exactly a year since I've arrived here. I came here in the second half of July last year, and I've enjoyed 1 year of being in Bangladesh, traveling around, meeting with the people, meeting with governments, with officials, with private sector representatives, with the non-governmental sector, with the media. So I can only say that it's a delight to be the Dutch ambassador here in Bangladesh, because the Netherlands and Bangladesh do have so much in common. And indeed, this was also a special year, because we celebrated, as you said at your introduction, we celebrated 50 years of friendship and cooperation between the Netherlands and Bangladesh. We look back at 5 decades of intense cooperation and friendship in the most positive and constructive manner.
Ambassador, after Bangladesh's independence in 1971, the Kingdom of the Netherlands was one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh, as you mentioned, as a nation and to set up diplomatic ties. How would you define the bilateral relations between Bangladesh and Netherlands in the past 50 years?
Yes, you know, well, of course, when Bangladesh won its War of Liberation in 1971, it was considered to be one of the poorest and least developed countries in the world. And when you look back at the 5 decades ever since, it is amazing, it's incredible what has been achieved in Bangladesh, from one of those very poor countries to a country that is now on the brink of graduation to a middle-income country. It's amazing, and I often explain to my friends in the Netherlands when they ask me about Bangladesh, is the most stunning figure that I can give them is that the population of Bangladesh in those 50 years grew from 70 million people in 71 to 170 million now 50 years later. So you added 100 million people to your population and were able to have a per capita growth of the economy every year, and often in double digits. So you have had an amazing, unparalleled economic growth in those 50 years, which is only to be attributed to the people of Bangladesh, who are so entrepreneurial and hardworking and energetic.
And what do you think is a testimony to our strong friendship and collaboration during these 50 years of our bilateral ties?
Yeah. Well, of course, we started in 1971 from the Netherlands because of the very poor condition that the country was in, the low position of Bangladesh in the international rankings. We started with seeing Bangladesh as one of our main recipients and partners in international development cooperation. So, and we have done that, we have continued that for 50 years. For 50 years, Bangladesh has always been top on the list of recipients of official development assistance from the Netherlands. And I'm not claiming that the amazing development of Bangladesh is thanks to the international assistance, because in the first place it's the work of the Bangladeshi people. But we were able and we were grateful and glad to assist with our development assistance. Now we are looking at a new phase. Just because of the great success of Bangladesh in economic sense, we are feeling that there is less need for this international development assistance, this official development assistance, and we are going to make a transition to a more balanced relationship in which knowledge exchange and economic cooperation, trade and investments is more at the core. So we're making this in one-liner a shift from aid to trade in our cooperation.
Ambassador, as you know that a common tie between Netherlands and Bangladesh is the kind of geography of the two nations. Both our nations are situated in a delta. Do you think this geographical similarity translates to common real-world experiences among the two peoples?
That's absolutely true. You know, when I'm flying over Bangladesh or driving on the roads in Bangladesh, I often feel so much at home, and I often recognize so much because the similarities between the two countries are amazing. Bangladesh and the Netherlands, we are both very flat, low-lying countries, very green, with lots of water. Sometimes you don't know whether there is an island in the water or there is a canal in the land. It goes continuously, water and land. And then we have the delta component. Wide rivers coming from the mountains. In the Netherlands, they're coming from the Alps. In Switzerland, in Bangladesh, partly from the Himalaya. And they all come to the low-lying lands that we occupy. The Netherlands is also known as the low countries. The same could be said for Bangladesh. It's also the low countries. So we recognize each other in that, in the geographical sense, but also in the way that you, for centuries, for generations and generations, were aware of the fact that water can be a friend and can be a foe. It is a main contributor, of course, to the great richness and the great potential in agriculture for Bangladesh as it is in the Netherlands, because it contributes with all kinds of nutritions. But at the same time, water can be a big foe, can be an enemy, can be very dangerous. And the Netherlands and Bangladesh as countries, but also the Bangladeshi people and the Dutch people, they recognize each other in the fact that you have to be able to manage your water. And in the Netherlands, I can claim without boasting, we are the best in the world in water management, combining that with agriculture and climate change adaptation right now. So those things, we recognize each other that we need to work on it, and we recognize each other as partners where we can find each other and learn from each other.
As you know that Bangladesh is currently working on its Delta Plan. It has undertaken a 4-year project to support and follow up implementation of the Delta Plan with the assistance of the government of the Netherlands. Where the primary focus of Bangladesh and the Netherlands is on river management, what are your thoughts on this strategic collaboration between the Netherlands and Bangladesh?
Yeah, well, the Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, the name in itself says it all, is a very long-term strategy which looks forward to even the end of the century, so another 80 years. So it's a big visionary plan, very important, adopted by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2018. It's a lot of volumes, very big documents and books, very important and very well put. And we were grateful and glad to be able to contribute to the formulation of the plan. It's a Bangladesh plan, but we had our assistance there. We were happy to contribute. Now the next challenge we feel is that how can you make the next step from having a plan with all kinds of priorities and programs to real implementation? How are you going to be effective? How are you going to really put the hands on the plow, so to speak, and implement all the programs that are there? That's a very important next phase. It's not so much as about do we identify the needs that should be done and tackled, but it's more important now to discuss who is going to do what and when and where. And that's very practical. We did have a conference on that a couple of months ago in the last week of May, where we discussed with the government of Bangladesh, with international partners, how we are going to take those next steps and bring everybody on board and do the real implementation of the plan.
Mr. Arne, you have seen the ongoing situation of how Bangladesh is suffering from devastating floods. How much do you think Bangladesh river or water management system is responsible for this situation? Do you believe the Delta Plan will have measures to deter such flooding in the future, or is this just inevitable due to climate change?
Well, you know, of course, the Delta Plan in the Netherlands and the Delta Plan in Bangladesh is, of course, a plan for adaptation. It's real climate change adaptation. Even before we knew the word climate change adaptation, our Delta Plan in the Netherlands, which is about almost a century old now, is an adaptation plan. The same goes for the Bangladesh Delta Plan. It's an adaptation plan. What we have learned in the Netherlands during centuries is that you sometimes cannot, let's say, fight the water. You have to work with the water. I mean, if you try to stop the water will win, because it's a force of nature that nobody can control. So you have to build with nature. In the Netherlands, we have a concept which is called room for the river, which means that sometimes you cannot claim that you can control the river by building even higher dikes every time, but sometimes you give it some space. That's a very important lesson for Bangladesh, and it's in the Delta Plan, which is a very, very important instrument, a strategy, and long-term vision for indeed adapting to climate change and see to it that the effects of climate change are less disastrous than they used to be.
Ambassador, the Food and Nutrition Security Program by the Netherlands and Bangladesh is stated to be phased out by 2022. Do you think Bangladesh has achieved a degree and self-sustainability when it comes on food and nutrition security in the last 50 years, or do you think there is still a lot to be done?
Bangladesh has made enormous steps in its productivity in agriculture. It's amazing how it's getting to self-sufficiency in its food production. It's made big steps in the last couple of decades. The Netherlands is, I can say, the most efficient, the most effective agricultural producer in the world. We are the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, only second to the United States, and that on a surface area that is 1/3 of the surface area of Bangladesh. So we are very efficient in that respect, and we are very happy to work together with the agricultural sector and the agri-food sector here in Bangladesh to see how we can enhance the capacity and the capabilities and efficiency of the agri-food sector in Bangladesh. We feel there's a lot to be won there, but already Bangladesh has made huge steps in that respect.
And Bangladesh has under scrutiny regarding human rights for some time and various reasons. As an international human rights partner, the Netherlands has openly stated that it is striving for increased international support for a free, open and multiform civic space worldwide. How do you think a developing nation should meet the challenge of balancing development goals and international trade demands while maintaining human rights consideration and a free and open civic space?
I think this is a very, very important issue. And the main answer to your question is there is no disparity, there is no tension between the 2 points that you mentioned. There is no conflict between human rights and economic development. I would rather see it the other way around. Economic development and progress is benefiting from human rights. When people feel they are free, at liberty to express their views and state their opinions, that will enhance their creativity and their productivity, and they will be more able to produce. So economic growth and human rights is not in conflict with each other. Economic growth and human rights are in line with each other. And of course, the Netherlands and Bangladesh, as many other countries, we are partners as signatories to human rights declarations and fundamental rights, universal rights as put in the United Nations Charter. So we are partners in that respect. Yep. And are happy to discuss these issues with each other.
Ambassador, and here is another issue. As you know, more than 1 million Rohingya people have fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh since 2017. The Netherlands has strongly supported the humanitarian response for these refugees in Bangladesh and is also promoting international accountability for the atrocities committed against the Rohingya in Myanmar. However, the situation has now been generally sidelined due to the international focus shifting towards the war in Ukraine. Do you believe it will be possible for international accountability mechanisms such as the International Court of Justice to find a long-term solution for the genocide in Myanmar and allow safe repatriation of the refugees?
Yeah, this is not a very important issue. The Netherlands is the host country for the International Criminal Court and for the International Court of Justice, where the cases are being brought to about the genocide in Myanmar and the wars and the crimes against the Rohingya people. So we, as a host country to those international justice organizations, we are very much involved. And we feel it's very important that justice should be done, and those who are responsible for those crimes against humanity and those crimes against the Rohingya people should be brought to court. So that's the legal aspect, very important, and the Netherlands has always been on the forefront of that in supporting those judicial processes. As far as the humanitarian aspect is concerned, the Netherlands is one of the main core contributors to UNHCR as the international organization that takes care of the refugee issues. We feel that as far as the Rohingya issue is concerned, of course, the first thing that you should say is the solution to the issue lays east of the border of Bangladesh. It is in Myanmar. It's important that things change in Myanmar, and that conditions in Myanmar are conducive for a safe and sustainable and voluntary and dignified return of Rohingyas. And the majority, the vast majority, almost 100% of the Rohingya people who are now in Cox's Bazar, they want to return, but it should be on a safe and voluntary and dignified and sustainable manner. And again, the solution to that lies in Myanmar. Things should change there. As long as Rohingya people will stay in Bangladesh, in the first place, one should remark it is an amazing contribution that Bangladeshi people make to the reception of the Rohingya people. This is something very special, and we can only applaud the people, and particularly the host communities in Cox's Bazar, for being able to receive about 1 million guests, so to speak, which is quite a burden. And we understand that. So in our assistance, we take care of the fact that we do not only assist the refugees, but also the host community, because it's important to recognize their fate as well. As far as the Rohingya refugees are concerned, I feel it's important that there is attention for, let's say, livelihood and education, because they are here to stay for some time. It will not be tomorrow that they can return in the conditions that are put for their return. And I think the most catchy phrase that I heard from a Rohingya representative when I was in Cox's Bazar was, he said, you know, I hope that I can return as soon as possible. When it will be the case, we will happily go. The only thing, I mean, I cannot bring anything with me when I return to Rakhine, to Myanmar. The only thing that I can bring is knowledge that I can get. So please help me in education and in livelihood skills. So that's a very important thing, because then you prepare people to return indeed in a dignified and sustainable manner.
Mr. Ambassador, foreign direct investment from the Netherlands has always been prominent in Bangladesh. Recently, we have seen an increase in FDI from the Netherlands, which overtook China in terms of FDI in 2021. In your opinion, what might be the reason for this rise in investment?
That would be the foreign direct investment in the Netherlands, you mean? Yeah, well, that is always, you know, statistics can be a tricky one, and it is not always easy to compare different figures. But indeed, the Netherlands, of course, is a very open economy. We have the biggest port in the world, or the biggest port in Europe, I should say, in Rotterdam. So there's a lot of investment coming on that side, involved with our connectivity to the whole world. As far as foreign direct investment in Bangladesh is concerned, we have it as our aim to increase the Dutch foreign direct investment in Bangladesh. We feel it's important to do so. It contributes to the development of the economy, and as I said, we are in this transition from aid to trade. So we are going to get in close collaboration with my friend, the ambassador of Bangladesh in The Hague, who has exactly the same agenda as I have here, to try and attract as much as we can the Dutch entrepreneurs to come to Bangladesh and to invest here in the economy of Bangladesh.
And Bangladesh is one of the lowest FDI inflow rates among the countries in Asia. What do you think are the significant constraints that are driving away foreign investors from Bangladesh's economy, and what can Bangladesh do to remedy that?
Yeah, there is of course an aspect here also about image. When I speak to international entrepreneurs from the Netherlands, but also from other countries, the first piece of homework that they do when they are thinking about international investment abroad of in our case the Netherlands, they do their homework. So they check what's the position of this country on an ease of doing business index, on a corruption perception index, on a lot of those kind of criteria that international business people are investigating before they come and invest. And whether you like it or not, and whether you criticize maybe the mechanisms and the techniques behind those different indexes and criteria, Bangladesh still is very low on many of those indexes. So this is also an image issue. So I think it's important that Bangladesh takes this seriously and is looking at the business climate, at the ease of doing business here, and sees to it that its image is better and the practice is better as well, because there is huge potential, of course, for direct foreign investment here in Bangladesh. And I can only hope, and in that sense, I'm also the ambassador of Bangladesh to the Netherlands, that people come to Bangladesh and see how much there can be done and how good business can be here.
Great. The majority of export from Bangladesh has been textiles and garments. Do you see that this trade relation continue through Bangladesh's LDC graduation process? And do you think there are other trade avenues between the Netherlands and Bangladesh besides textiles?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very important, and it's recognized widely in Bangladesh itself, that the diversification of the economy is of utmost importance in Bangladesh. I think it is about 80 or 90% of the export basket of Bangladesh is now in the RMG, and that's risky because you're vulnerable if you are so much dependent on one sector. So diversification of the economy, of the export sector in the first place is of huge importance. And we feel that particularly in the field of agriculture, we can do a lot here. So agriculture and knowledge exchange is high on my agenda. I'm working with my Bangladeshi friends in the private sector, in the government, in the non-governmental sector, to see to it that we can improve our cooperation and that we diversify from not only being a recipient of the RMG as being produced in Bangladesh, also work together on trade and investment in other sectors than only the RMG. I think it's really a top priority.
Ambassador, since the Rana Plaza tragedy, Bangladesh has come a long way in providing labor rights and maintaining international workplace safety compliances. The labor force in the RMG sector is in many ways the lifeblood of Bangladesh's economy. However, we see an alarming rise in income inequality occurring in Bangladesh that is not really being addressed at the moment. Do you believe that development at the expense of poor working people is a sustainable model of economic growth?
Well, the short answer to your question, of course, is no, that is not a sustainable product growth. But the more elaborate answer would be, in the first place, to recognize how much has been done in Bangladesh since the Rana Plaza incident and the disaster. We have been very much involved in that. And a previous minister from the Netherlands on Development Cooperation, Mr. Ploemen, has been very instrumental in asking attention for labor conditions in the RMG factories. And it's incredible how much has been achieved and how the safety conditions in the factories have improved in the last couple of years. And I'm very grateful that this is also an issue that really the government of Bangladesh and the private sector, particularly of course the BGMEA as representative of the RMG employers, is very open to discuss with the international community, with the brands, with the buyers, with the customers, how we can improve things, because it's of course recognized that this is really very important, and you can only say that the improvements that have been made and the higher ranking that Bangladesh is getting on those indicators is really a fine piece of work.
Mr. Ambassador, the Netherlands mission in Bangladesh had also previously phased out its sexual reproductive health and rights programs. What are your thoughts on Bangladesh's reproductive health and rights policies? Do you believe advocacy for such rights should be conducted by the civil society of the nation?
Yes, absolutely. This has always been very much in our policy, but I think that the Netherlands and Bangladesh recognize each other here. There is no kind of tension in whether this is important. I feel also in Bangladesh there are big programs here, and it's so important that young women and girls get an education in what are their rights on sexuality, on gender, on anti-conception, on birth control, that they know what is feasible. And I feel that this is also recognized broadly in Bangladesh by the population. So we are happy to work with Bangladesh in this field, and it's with a big population, with a very young population, of course. I mean, the majority of the Bangladeshi citizens are young. Mm-hmm. It's important that we do have those programs and that we educate the adolescents, but also the adults about these very important issues.
This year marks the end of Bangladesh's second presidency over the Climate Vulnerable Forum. In your opinion, how has Bangladesh fared in representing the voices of the most climate vulnerable nations at the COP and on the world stage?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of logical that this is at the forefront of Bangladeshi policy. The Netherlands and Bangladesh do have in common that we are very vulnerable to climate change as low-lying countries close to the sea, very easily affected by rising sea levels and changes in weather pattern. So it's only logical that Bangladesh has taken up this important position in the Climate Vulnerability Forum. And it's testament also to the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister in this respect, who took this role upon. To ask internationally the attention of the importance of the effects of climate change for countries like Bangladesh. So I can only applaud Bangladesh for that.
Thank you. In a recent Bangladesh-Netherlands Agri business conference held in Hague, the Netherlands, the Ministry of Agriculture of Bangladesh and the Deputy Director General of the Netherlands Ministry of Agriculture discussed the future of Bangladesh-Netherlands agro relations. And the Netherlands showed an affirmative reaction. What are the potentials for agricultural collaboration between the Netherlands and Bangladesh in your point of view?
This is key. This is I feel the core area for our cooperation in the coming years and decades. As I said, we're going from aid to trade, and when we are in the trade sector, the potential that we have in the further development of the agricultural sector in Bangladesh is huge important. It's the combination of the diversification of the economy. It's about export enlargement. It's about import substitution. It's about being independent. It's about feeding your own country. It's a huge market here. So the agro-business, the agro-food sector is absolutely the core area where we're going to work. We have identified a couple of sectors like poultry, like dairy, like potatoes, like onions. I mean, there's a wide array of sectors in the agri-food where we feel that we can work together and enlarge the productivity and efficiency of the food sector. And it goes from from the production, from the pre-harvest to also the post-harvest, because that's a very important part in the whole value chain, that you not only look how's the crop standing on the field, but also post-harvest what happens and what are the losses, because post-harvest losses are very huge and are relatively easy to diminish, so that you have lower losses and higher productivity, so that you have bigger profits and can feed your own country.
As we all know that the Netherlands is less than one-third of in size of Bangladesh, yet it is the second largest exporter of agri products globally. Dutch innovation in agricultural science is highly sought after in an agriculture focused nation such as Bangladesh. Is there a possibility of the Netherlands extending scholarship support to students in Bangladesh who are interested in learning agriculture related subjects?
Yeah. Just by accident and coincidence, just last week I hosted a little reception at my residence for Bangladeshi students who are about to travel to the Netherlands. Each year we have hundreds of Bangladeshi students coming to the Netherlands, and you know, it's a joy when I travel around in Dhaka, but also further in Bangladesh. Every time I am having meetings with people who come to me and say, you are the Dutch ambassador. I used to study in Wageningen, in the Agricultural University, or in Delft on water management, or in The Hague on social studies. So it's a fantastic encounter every time I meet them. They've been in the Netherlands, they studied there, they are fantastic ambassadors for the Netherlands here in Bangladesh. They have been fantastic ambassadors for Bangladesh in the Netherlands. So we work a lot on that together, and particularly in the field of as I said, agriculture, water management and social sciences. We see many people going. So viewers who are interested in coming to the Netherlands and go to university, please go on the internet and find some more info on the websites of those universities, and you're always welcome to contact my embassy as well and see how we can work together, because I feel the exchange of youth and students bilaterally, youth coming to Bangladesh from the Netherlands and young Bangladeshi students going to universities in the Netherlands is fantastic and only builds on the friendship between our two nations.
With Bangladesh set to graduate from LDC status, how do you see the future of bilateral relations between the Netherlands and Bangladesh?
Well, as I said, we've grown from Bangladesh has grown from being very one of the least developed countries in the world in 1971, devastated by the war and floods and cyclones, to being now a middle-income country, proud of its history and its achievements. And our future relation will be on that basis. Two proud nations recognizing each other in many aspects, in the agricultural side, in the delta geography that we share. So I'm very optimistic about the future of our friendship and our cooperation in, let's say, the next 50 years that we are looking to.
Well, Ambassador, we are at the end of the program. Would you like to add anything or a few words for the viewers?
Well, you know, it's really a treat to be here in your studio in the first place, and I would like to state that the year that I've been here now in Dhaka, exactly a year, I have been so impressed by how I'm greeted and met and welcomed everywhere, you know, I am, whether it's in Dhaka or in the corners of the country, so to speak. It's amazing how friendly people are, how interested they are, how there's always a smile on their face, and how entrepreneurial they are. And maybe as a final remark, I have two sons. They are 28 and 30 years of age, and they have been with my wife and myself all over the world. Now they are on their own as adults and having their own life in the Netherlands. They came to visit us a couple of months ago, and it was their first visit to Bangladesh. And they also were so, I mean, again, they have been really all over the world, from Australia to Alaska and North and South America and Europe and Africa. And they said, this is unique, what we see here in Bangladesh. And their one-liner, maybe that's a concluding remark, was, in Bangladesh, they said, what's so remarkable is everybody is all the time going somewhere to do something. And I think that's the best one-liner about what Bangladesh is all about. Every time people are going to work, to be energetic and to create value. And that's a testament to the people of Bangladesh, who are the only explanation of this amazing growth and prosperity that has been achieved in 50 years.
Indeed, great words. Thank you so much, Ambassador Anne van Leeuwen. Indeed, the discussion with you was fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me.
The friendship between Bangladesh and Netherlands has only continued to grow stronger since the diplomatic ties first began. Now bilateral relations are shifting from an aid-based framework to a trade-based one, as Ambassador said. As Bangladesh graduates from LDC status and the Delta Plan comes into fruition, we hope that our development partner and fellow Delta nation will continue to provide their technical experience and expertise. Through mutual cooperation, it is my hope that relations between the Netherlands and Bangladesh will become even stronger. Dear viewers, thank you for joining us. Good day and good luck.